What's up, world? Thanks for jumping in for another ride. I thought I'd do a 2-year review on our Retrax Pro XR bed cover. And Colin and I had actually purchased this bed cover about 2 years back, and we purchased it right before we were going on a hunting trip. And the primary reason for the purchase of the bed cover was we wanted to try and keep as much gear as possible stored away, safe from theft, and keep it dry. And so to start this video out, let's jump online real quick, and we're going to look at the original purchase receipt, and you can look at the date, and we're right at about 2 years, so I think we're about maybe 2.5 months short, something like that. But you can get an idea of what pricing was in. Obviously, there's been some price increases in the last right at 2 years, but we'll go through all the details, and then after that, we'll move over to the front of the truck, and we'll take a look at the front of the truck, and we'll start working our way back. And the reason why I say that is I kind of want to cover some of the details that are strong points and some of the weak points regarding the bed cover and also the accessories that come along with the bed cover.
I pulled up the original receipt for the purchase that I made, and I actually purchased this bed cover through Tonneau Factory Outlet. And as you can see, I paid full price for it. So this isn't any sort of sponsorship or brand deal, anything like that. This is 100% transparent, and I'm going to be as honest as I could possibly be about this. So at this point, we're coming up on 2 years as of this video being published. So I purchased the bed cover on September 24th of 2021, and it was shipped and actually showed up in probably about 2 days. So ship time was really excellent on this, and total price with all in was $23.99.99. And as you can see, I did pay a little bit extra for expedited shipping, so you could knock $100 off of that. So I went ahead and paid the expedited shipping at the time because my son and I were actually planning on going on a hunting trip, and we wanted to go ahead and get the bed cover installed. That way we could utilize it and see how it worked out. I really wished I would have done an install video, but at the time I really didn't even know what this channel was going to be, so it wasn't even on the radar. So I don't have an install video, but I'll go through as much of that as I can during the review. And up here I wanted to share the model. That way if maybe you're doing research for a purchase or maybe for your specific application, something like that, you would have the particular make and model for this bed cover, and you can kind of apply that over to whatever application you have. Whether you're looking for the aluminum or the less expensive option, whether you're going manual or you're going power sliding, or however you want to configure yours. So there's the date, there's the price, and we'll go ahead and continue with the rest of the review. And I'll give you as much information on the Retrax Powertrax Pro XR as I possibly can.
So the Retrax Pro XR bed cover is the powered version, and there is also the manual version. Now, the version that I purchased is the aluminum version, and just 100% transparency. The reason why I decided to go with the aluminum version is being in Texas. I kind of heard a few horror stories reading through forums and stuff online, and people talking about that the composite, or I guess it's a plastic material, getting really faded in the sun and kind of breaking down and showing a lot of wear. Well, after 2 years, we'll go over the aluminum version, and it's kind of a textured powder coat finish. It's a pretty nice finish. We'll go over all the appearance and things like that as far as how it's physically held up. Referring back to the powered version of the Retrax Pro bed cover, it comes with a key fob, and the key fob is actually pretty nice. It's just a plastic material, and it has O for open, it has C for close, and it also has a LED light in it. And so as we work our way to the back, we'll look at that more in detail, but that is the key fob that runs it, and you can kind of get a general idea of the size of the key fob. So to begin with the front of the truck, one of the things that you'll have to do is you'll have to run power from the Retrax bed cover, the wiring all the way up to the front, under the hood, directly to the battery. So as you run the power up to the front, it obviously has a negative side. We just used the factory terminal stud that actually squeezes this down to keep the negative in place to hold it. And additionally, on the positive side, same thing, we tied it in there. A couple of quick negatives regarding the Retrax Pro bed cover and how it came set up is there were actually no ends on the end of the wiring. So this electrical end on here and the electrical end for the positive, I actually installed that. Additionally, it does not come with a fuse holder. The fuse holder was purchased separately and installed. I thought that was just a terrible idea to have something wired in direct going all the way back. And so the fuse holder that I purchased and installed is just a really simple 10 amp bus fuse. And so it's just an inline fuse. But I thought the fact that they would run wiring from the front of the battery all the way back to the bed was just kind of ridiculous, to be honest. Move on to the rest of the wiring. You can take a look here, and the wiring was just totally exposed wires. I mean, you know, it was normal insulated wire, but there was absolutely no loom of any kind on the wiring. So I actually purchased additional loom, and this is DEI heat shield loom. And I actually sleeved the entire wiring harness, which is really just 2 wires. And so I sleeved the entire thing in DEI loom all the way back to the bed cover. My idea was, over time, with this being just exposed wire, we're looking at 2 years already with heat cycles and whatnot, that just seemed like a really dangerous thing for me. I decided to go ahead and loom the entire wires, so that's a downside. And if we keep going, we can see that what I did was I ran the wiring down inside the radiator shroud, so it runs under this lip along the top of the radiator, along the backside of the air intake. We run all the way to the far side of the battery box. From there, it drops straight down, and I actually tied it with zip ties to the lower portion of the master cylinder so that there wasn't any movement. It drops down from there on the inner fender, and then from there, it goes down to the inside of the frame rail and follows the brake lines to the front of the bed. So you can see that there is a weather seal or a rubber seal between the cab and the bed cover. And so the wiring actually just runs along the frame rail and then comes up between the cab and the bed, right along that weather stripping. And then as we move our way up, it comes up through this weather seal and it's completely hidden, and it ties into the canister for the Retrax bed cover. Now, when it comes to mounting and installing the Retrax bed cover, it was actually Colin and myself and a friend of mine, Clayton. We actually installed it in an evening. Definitely not going to sugarcoat it. It was a pretty good job to install the bed cover. 3 of us took a couple of hours. And I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably somewhere around a 3 or 4. It just takes a little bit of prep time. That's the biggest thing to it, to kind of get everything lined up and set in place. And it's one of those situations that if you've never done it before, it's obviously going to take a little bit of time. But if it's you and a buddy, it can definitely be done in the afternoon. So don't have any fears about that. Just take your time, follow the instructions. The instructions that came with the Retrax bed cover are pretty good instructions, so no worries there. And one of the things that actually was supposed to be an addition, or I guess a freebie, or however you want to call it, from Tonneau Factory Outlet, was the weather stripping for the bed cover. And I'm going to be honest here, it's okay at best. It doesn't do a great job. As you can see, you're going to have to cut it with a razor to kind of fit it around the bumper stops and things like that. It does an okay job. If you're on a really dusty road, or if it's just an absolute monsoon, it's not really going to stop anything. It's just going to slow things down. So it's kind of up in the air if the tailgate seal is worth it or not. But if it comes with it, I would definitely go ahead and install it. And we actually took the time to close this thing up, and Colin laid inside of the bed when we closed the tailgate, and you could still see a little bit of light. Now, it does slow things down, so there is that when it comes to the bed seal. So it's okay. It's going to cost you a lot of money. I definitely wouldn't do it. Now, the drains that come out of the bottom of the canister to keep any water from building up in the canister on the left and on the right, the left one has actually done a great job. Now, the one on the right is kind of prone to falling out, and I don't know why it doesn't fit up in the canister really well. I've actually used some RTV silicone a couple of times and kind of glued it up into place, and it doesn't leak or anything. It just has a hard time staying in place, and I have no clue why. I've actually thought about using a 2-part epoxy or something, but my fear is that at that point it's going to be so permanently in place that it's not going to matter anyway. So that is kind of one of the things to the drains, that you will have to run a drain out of the bed. So the canister drains are a little bit hit and miss to me. They do work. I've never had any water intrusion actually from the drains. And on the front of the F-150, on each side of the bed, there is actually a couple of rubber plugs. So I didn't have to drill any holes through the actual bed. I just took a razor knife, cut out the rubber plugs, and went ahead and fished the drain hoses through that. But I don't know why, but on that right side, it just doesn't fit great. But that's not a big deal, since there's really never been any real water intrusion. I just have to keep an eye on it and put it back in place every once in a while. And it's only been a couple of times over the last 2 years, so not a big deal. On the driver's side, the wiring harness comes through on the inside here by the canister. And this truck actually came with the cargo hold down option. And so you can see the cargo hold downs over here. And I just slipped the one here at the front of the bed cover. I used that to tie up any additional wiring. And you can see there is the same loom that's under the hood that runs all the way from the front to the back. And then it just uses a regular plug like a maintainer. So I just placed everything there, tied it up into place, and I've never had an issue with it. And my thought was the additional wiring may be good in the event that I ever have any electrical troubles. So at this point, never had any trouble, so no complaints there. Just above that, it does have an LED light, and the LED light does have 12 LEDs in it. And it's actually very useful. This truck did not come with any sort of lighting option. And so Colin and I have used this a lot. 4:30 in the morning when we're getting ready to go out and hunt, we lay our bows in the bed of the truck, whatever we're going to take with us, and we can just turn the light on. We've got plenty of light. We close the bed cover up and we're good to go. The light does have a timer on it, so if you leave it on, it will go off. So that's kind of cool. Never had a problem with the LED draining the battery. So the LED is a very nice option on this bed cover. Out the LED on the canister, it has a couple of metal hooks at the top of it, and it also came with a double-sided tape at the back. Now, probably about a year in, maybe a little over a year in, the double-sided tape did turn loose on the back side of the light, and so all I did was take it off, clean up with an alcohol pad, and use a piece of 3M double-sided tape, stuck it back on there. Never had a problem with it since. So that was one quick repair that I did have to make after maybe a year or so. Now, this bed cover did come with the slots to mount something like a Yakima rack or something like that. I've never actually had anything mounted on this bed cover, but I'm actually very interested to do that. So Colin and I have actually talked about purchasing a bed rack. Kind of like to experiment with that, but it does have the option for it. Just honestly, I've never used it at this point. So that's one of the things that I'd like to try out. LED light activated. We can deactivate, and you just hold the button to close or open. Once it's back in the back position, you can just let off of it. And at the very back of the bed cover, it does have a pretty nice piece of weather stripping. And the weather stripping does do a really good job of keeping any kind of moisture or rain out of it. After 2 years of owning this bed cover, I'm not going to tell you if by any stretch of the imagination is it completely waterproof. It will get water in it every once in a while. And it's not a lot of water. One of the advantages that has kind of worked out in the favor for Colin and I is the fact that it has these grooves in the bed liner. And any moisture normally just goes down the bottom of these grooves and we can make it run out. Moisture that gets into the bed isn't extensive. So if you put things like clothes or anything like there, I would just recommend throwing it in maybe a dry bag. You could even use like a plastic trash bag, something like that. But outside of that, anything like coolers, we actually put our Pelican bow cases back there, something like that. You're not going to have any issues. What gets on it's going to be so light, you can just take a rag and wipe it up. But just know that it's definitely not 100% waterproof in heavy rains. And as far as the overall appearance of the bed cover, you can see that it's held up really well. It has a couple of spots out on the outer edges that have kind of faded just slightly, but the powder coating has held up really excellent as far as the appearance of it. And the overall functionality of it is still working great after 2 years. So really happy with the overall appearance and how it's held up. So my overall review and thoughts about the Retrax Pro XR bed cover is that it's very durable. It's held up great over time. And I'm really happy with the way the appearance has held up. A lot of things, especially in the Texas sun, they would have been way more degraded. Now, a couple of points that I think could use improving about this bed cover is, I would personally like to see the wiring come with loom. I think it's a crazy idea to send out bare wiring to be ran all the way from the rear of a truck up to the front of the truck. My opinion is that's just dangerous and you're waiting for either something to short out, cause a fire, whatever it may be. Second thing is, I would really like to see a inline fuse with this bed cover. I think it's a terrible idea to have something electrical run all the way from the rear of the truck to the front of the truck without an inline fuse. And lastly is the LED, the double-sided tape coming loose. Definitely not a big deal. I would like to see something a little more functional. Probably something like maybe some cap head screws or something like that to hold it in place instead of just double-sided tape. Definitely not the end of the world. It's a simple fix. Last thing is the drain hose. I would definitely like to see the drain hose make a better fit. And I get it, it's a business, it's a give and take. They have to balance profitability versus how much quality time and effort that they put into it. My biggest thing about this bed cover is the electrical side of it. Honestly, for the $2,200 and offsetting the cost for a couple of fuse holders and some loom, really isn't that big of a deal. I get it, it's just always a pain that whenever you purchase something and you think it's a quality product, you have to go and track those things down just to get the project started. Now with that, I understand that it's not just Retrax. Every aftermarket company out there in the world is like that, and we'll just use headers for an example. You can buy the nicest headers in the world, and if they say that it comes with all the install gear, it's going to come with the cheapest gaskets and the cheapest bolts that they can get off of the shelf. It's just part of it. Now, that's my overall thoughts about the Retrax bed cover. It's an extremely nice bed cover. It's held up really, really well over the last 2 years. I really like it, and it's been absolutely great as far as durability and functionality. Just if you purchase this bed cover, just know up front that if you're going to buy the powered version of it, go ahead and be prepared to make the install right, that you're going to need a few accessories to go along with it. Not a big deal. It's going to cost you a few extra bucks and some time and effort. So that's my honest review about the Retrax XR Pro bed cover. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end and hanging out with me. And as always, jump in for another ride.